Yes, guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another live stream. Feels like a while since we've been live, obviously post-match of the Salzburg game, which seems like an eternity ago, but it's still less than a week. And with Chelsea not in action to the 1st of October, thought we'd be struggling for news. But actually, there's still plenty going on. And you know, yesterday over the weekend, we thought we were going to be having Christoph Freund as the new director of football. That seemed all pretty much set to go. Contract had been agreed or verbally agreed between Chelsea and Freund. It looked like just an agreement between the two clubs was needed. But you fast forward less than 24 hours and Christoph Freund has decided that he is going to stay at RB Salzburg. So obviously rejecting Chelsea to stay at Salzburg. That is obviously the big news from today. We'll cover some other topics. Christian Pulisic's book, the midfield conundrum, Ronaldo links again, Kai Havertz potentially to Bayern Munich next summer. There's plenty to get through. I'm delighted to be joined by Laurence, bro. Pleasure to be joined by you as always. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Mate, it was only yesterday on your channel that me, you and Pies were discussing whether we thought Christoph Freund was going to be any good or not. That's now completely irrelevant because he's not coming. What do you make of it, mate? Obviously, it seems like another day at the circus at Chelsea. We seem pretty set on this guy. And then for whatever reason, he kind of turns around and decides that he's happy to stay at Salzburg. Now, I can understand that. If he doesn't want to come, that's fine, you know. But surely we would have found this out earlier in the process. We've also been speaking to him for a while. You know, initial conversations started when we were inquiring about Benjamin Sesko. And then you think, well, if you verbally agreed a contract and that, and you're pretty close to finalising something, surely you're finding out before that point that he doesn't want to be here. I mean, what do you make of the whole situation? Because it's a bit of a mess, really.
Mate, like you said, we were streaming on my channel yesterday. I was thinking when all of this came out today, I was like, bloody hell, do I need to change like the thumbnail or the title? Like, what is this? Like, honestly, we were sat there yesterday as if this was happening, like as if it was just a matter of time. And then remember, like the Ben Jacobs tweet comes out and we're just there laughing about it, saying, oh, they're just doing another Brighton. Look at us. Now we're the mugs. Like, honestly, I don't really know what to make of it because it seems to just be a drastic U-turn. You know how you just said, why doesn't that come up sooner? I guess, well, he probably did want to come until now. I don't know what exactly the reasons are in terms of, did he just not, like, someone said in a group chat, it might have even been you, Charlie, I can't remember if I'm honest. Someone said, like, you know, maybe he just didn't feel comfortable leaving Salzburg if Salzburg weren't, like, giving him their blessing, I guess. But I just find that weird in itself. I mean, like, typical Red Bull, you know, makes me hate them even more. Like, come on, the guy's been working for you since 2006. It's now 2022. He gets an offer from one of the biggest clubs in the world. You're RB Salzburg, and you're telling your guy now you're staying. Like, come on, show some loyalty. Be a bit nice for once. But no, typical Red Bull. Of course, they have to be pricks to everybody. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like clearly he wanted to come. Otherwise, why did he change his mind last second? But somehow they clearly convinced him. I'm not trying to say they threatened him, but it's like they found something where you're like, well, wouldn't you rather stay? And he's like, all right, I'll stay. That's what I feel like happened. So, I mean, Texas Blue put it in the chat there, like collecting else. It is, but I'm not really sure how much of that is the club's fault. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm like, to what extent can Bowley and the rest of the, you know, Donnies that walking about here trying to sort shit out? How much can they control what Fabrizio Romano reports? Do you know what I mean? And if Fabrizio and Ornstein and whoever the others are don't report on it, and then Freund just says, no, actually, I'm not coming, then no one knows. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not sure if that's their fault directly. So, do you know what I mean with that? So it's...
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, how much can control it?
Are you slightly concerned that it appears that we've not been able to convince someone to leave Salzburg to join us? I mean, like, if you look at it from that perspective, it looks a little bit like, shit, do we lack pulling power? Are we lacking something, you know, with what we're offering? Because it's not the first time that we've been turned down. You know, obviously been turned down by players over the summer. That happens, but you sort of start to wonder, what are we doing in these negotiations? Or like, are we as an attractive a proposition as we think we are? Because we've seen, you know, other players preferring to go elsewhere. You know, Freund now deciding that he wants to stay. I mean, maybe it's a good thing, you know. Maybe if he lacks the ambition to leave Salzburg and join Chelsea, maybe we don't want someone in that position that hasn't got the ambition to push himself ahead.
Absolutely. And obviously that only becomes relevant because he turned us down. So then it kind of all depends on what the reasons for turning us down are. Like, are the reasons simply that he got convinced, or is it family reasons, or is it like, almost he doesn't back himself to succeed, so he'd rather stay where he's, comfortable, which, to be fair, like, not everyone has to try to always be better. I mean, the guy's in a very high up position at RB Salzburg. He's making this good money. If he's just happy with doing that, fair play. Do you know what I mean? Who am I to criticize? That certainly makes more money than I do. What can I say? But it's like, now that he has turned us down, I guess, yeah, you can say it's better that he didn't come anyway. The problem is, who else are we going to get now? Now we seem to be talking to the guy of Leverkusen and
Leeds,
the guy of
potentially,
Leeds,
as well.
who apparently the Leeds fans are all gassed about if he leaves. At least according to Pice. Not sure if that's valid what he's saying.
Paul Mitchell still in the mix.
Is Paul Mitchell next? Because I heard about Leverkusen and the Leeds guy, and I haven't heard anything about Paul Mitchell.
Well, I think Ben Jacobs. I think Ben Jacobs has been saying that potentially, like, Paul Mitchell is still of interest. Now, what that means, still of interest. I mean, I guess, like, I'd be quite keen to get him on board, but again, you sort of where do we go from here? Because I've got to be perfectly honest, I know absolutely shit all about the Leverkusen director. Never heard of him before until like earlier this evening or a little bit or a couple of days ago. Never really heard of him. Obviously, Paul Mitchell's kind of the standout candidate. Never heard of this guy from Leeds.
But tell me though, bro. Did you hear of Paul Mitchell before 3 months ago when we were first linked with sport directors?
When he was at Tottenham, I like heard a little bit about his work. He was like keen worked well with Poch, but in terms of his name, but I can't lie. No, he's done well at Monaco and stuff, and Monaco have got a good record of identifying talent, bringing young players through, selling them on for big money and whatnot. But we're kind of left in we are sort of left in a bit of a mess here, because it's clear that we desperately want someone in place, ideally before the World Cup, really as soon as possible, so they can get in, start working, and then with a view to, having a big say on the January transfer window. But it now seems we're just kind of doing the rounds, and it's almost like we're asking every single person that's a Red Bull employee, do you want to come? Because, I'm seeing there's another, I think there's something else Fabrizio tweeted out not so long ago, I think in the last hour. And it's that RB Leipzig. I'll bring it up on the screen now. That RB Leipzig director, whatever his name is. I'll just quickly find it. Isn't it? Yeah, that's the one. Him. He's obviously ruling himself out in case we were thinking of it. RB Leipzig director Mitzlaff tells Sky Deutschland on Chelsea job under contract until Leipzig 2026. I'll fulfill my contract here with great pleasure. Still have a lot of plans, not only on the pitch. I feel comfortable here at Leipzig. So. I don't know what Red Bull. I don't know what's going on at Red Bull with these guys and what kind of the perks of the job are there. But it seems to be quite hard to get them out. I mean, are you concerned that we're too maybe Red Bull focused in terms of we've got to get a guy that's part of the Red Bull group, or do you think it's a good way to go? Because at the moment I'm thinking do we don't really look, the Red Bull group is a lot of good things. But there's also probably a few things that they do that are not so good. Do we want to become like Red Bull Chelsea per se? I don't really know. I mean, would you like to see us look a bit further afield? Because it just seems to me that we're just very much focusing on kind of a lot of guys from within the Red Bull group. Yeah,
I'm not really sure. I mean, the Minslav thing, obviously, I think it was in the Athletic a couple of days ago where there was a report that there was talks, but then it was kind of on both ends decided that we were not going to do anything. So, and now obviously he's asked about it after the whole Christoph Freund thing. But on the one hand, yes, we are looking at too many Red Bull people. On the other hand, I'm like, well, if we want to do what Red Bull are doing to some extent and ideally make it bigger and better, then I guess it makes sense to get someone from Red Bull. I'm surprised that I know Ralf Rangnick is Austria manager currently, but I'm surprised we haven't called him up yet. Do you know what I mean? If I'm honest, like in terms of what United and in the end didn't give him, because if we want someone to build a Red Bull structure, I mean, Ralf Rangnick has literally already done that. Like, unlike Freund, Rangnick was the guy that actually built it, right? But I just don't think Rangnick is personality-wise going to be a go-ahead because everyone seems to find him to be a prick. So. So, like, it might be okay as a manager. We'll see again what Austria do this week. But, there's been some dodgy things with him. At the same time, the guy's not stupid. And the guy, certainly wouldn't be the worst. It just depends on who we get instead now. Because, like I say, if we want to do something like Red Bull, how is someone that's not going to be from Red Bull, if that now presumably we're going to get someone that's not from Red Bull, how good are they going to be at building something that is like Red Bull? Do you know what I mean? So just the question, or like USA CFC said, is it just the point of just wait for Edwards then? Kind of, not directly what he said, but kind of. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you then just wait? Again, like we said on my stream yesterday, depends on how long of a break he does want. Like, if it's a year, maybe we should wait for him. If it's 2, 3, 4 years, or 2 or 3 years, shall we say, then it's probably not worth it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
I guess that has to be considered as well. And also, if we want 2 different types of people, like it still seems like we don't only want one person, get the other one done then. Do you know what I mean? Like, start with another one.
Just get someone in. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, just on Edwards, it's obviously clear that we've approached him and he was the guy we want. We must have ascertained that obviously he's not keen to come straight away. He's obviously not keen to come next summer, because if he was keen to come next summer and he's the guy you want, as we were saying yesterday, you might as well just wait till next summer. If you want him and he said he's going to come next summer, then just wait till then, because at the end of the day, January window, yeah, we're going to sign a few players, but it's like 4 weeks long. It doesn't need anywhere near as much work or preparation as the summer window does.
It's interesting if the January transfer window is going to be different this year because of the World Cup, because you almost have a month to prepare just for the January transfer window.
Yeah, it is a lot different.
Usually you're busy with games, so it's going to be interesting if it's going to be different to usual.
I wonder if anyone will get you might see if someone has a decent World Cup, they could get a big move. They could get a big move straight off the back of that in the January window.
Easier to pull those kind of deals off in January, like of the unknown players. Like, unknown is maybe a bit harsh, but of the a James Rodriguez back in 2014 type.
Yeah.
A player like that might almost be easier to just get in the hype of the World Cup in January, because, mind you, in the summer, the season already, the World Cup always ends in July 10th or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then the season starts August 10th. So then they go on holiday, then they start playing. While this time, they're going to have to play. There's nothing else on, and you might as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's a weird one. But just get someone. But I hope they're good. Do you think... I say get someone, but get someone good, please.
Yeah. I mean, as USA CFC saying here, is it actually worth? I reckon it's better to wait for the right person rather than just getting someone in for the sake of it. I mean, how far down the list are we prepared to go? There's going to be multiple names on the list, but I mean,
I guess it's just, if you wait, right, until we have this sorted, we're going to still be in a little bit of it's just going to slow any progression of anything down at the club, and we're going to stay in this limbo state of Bowley having to be in charge of everything, which people will criticize or take the piss out of, but essentially he doesn't even want to do that long term. He wants to get someone that does it well instead of him, and then just pull the strings behind that. Which do we want to be in that limbo situation for another nearly a year? I don't know either. It just depends on who's available, and I can't lie. I'm not an expert on sporting directors, and I'm also not an expert in terms of, because sporting director is very different to being a manager, and especially being a player. Like we said yesterday, Christoph Freund obviously had the credentials of a much, much lesser club than Chelsea and knew what he was doing at that level. But there was no guarantee we know for us to know how he was going to do at Chelsea. And I feel like that same problem applies to most, other than maybe Edwards and a couple of others that are so situated in their jobs that you're not going to get them. So it's like, what are we going to do next? Going to call Michael Emenalo again? Do you know what I mean?
I bet you say that. He's a guy out of work, knows the club, and I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of him at the time, but when you actually sort of step back and look at the work he did do some good work at Chelsea. I mean, he knows the structure and whatnot. I mean, I'd say it was unlikely that a return for him would happen, but. I mean, you could probably do a lot worse. But lastly on this bit, before we move on, I mean, how important to you, and how important do you think it is for the club to get someone in as soon as possible? Do you think it's really important, or do you think it doesn't really matter too much? I mean, I'm kind of in two minds about it, because, you want this structure in place so they can start working together and start planning as soon as possible. But then on the flip side, you're thinking, well, what difference does it make if we get someone in for the January window or not?
I don't think it necessarily the big deal about it is signing players in January. I don't think that's the big problem. I think it's just setting all the rest of the structure up so we can already get further into changing everything at the club into what we now need. Do you know what I mean? Like, getting potentially different kind of people for scouting and getting different kind of like finalizing an idea of what exactly we're striving for. And that whole project is, I would assume, only going to be worked out with Potter, sport director, and potentially a technical director and Bowley, right? Those four probably going to be that finalize this plan in the end, right? And before you have those people, you can't even finalize a plan. So how are you going to start executing a plan, right? Obviously, Potter will have his own personal preferences of players, so it shouldn't really affect us for January. So from that perspective, in terms of transfers, I don't think it's the biggest problem in the world, if I'm honest. Like, yeah, we've missed out on some players, but I don't think a new sporting director, especially someone of the level of the club like Christoph Freund, is gonna make it make too much of a big difference in us signing someone like Eds and Alvarez. Do you know what I mean? I think it makes no difference who we have in charge in that sense. But yeah, I think just for a little bit of stability in the club, it would be quite good. But then again, it's just difficult to judge at the moment because obviously Graham Potter was announced, then the Queen died, then we had the game postponed, then we played one game, which ended up not quite how we all wanted. Obviously, dropping points again and being
another game postponed.
Exactly, another game postponed, and now international break. So we don't even really know yet how things are going to be with Graham Potter. Maybe I will feel okay. We desperately need someone extra, or I will feel like okay, for the time being, Bowley and Potter together type thing. I've got this covered. So I'm not 100% sure yet, but someone said it earlier. I'd rather get the right person than someone. I agree with that. Yeah. The problem is I don't know who the right person is. So
this is it. And it's a hard position to fill. And as fans, it's sporting directors are not something you have a great wealth of knowledge on. It's not like, we might be getting this player or that player. Sporting directors is quite niche in terms of like how many people actually have a lot of knowledge about them. Because let's be honest, your average fan, or even us that like a bit more than your average fan in terms of interest, like you don't know an awful lot about these sporting directors. No. So it's quite hard to formulate an opinion.
Sorry to interrupt you there, because I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and even the whole terminology, right? Like sporting director, director of football, technical director, not these roles aren't necessarily filled the same at every club. So at some clubs, Toney is going to have the title of sporting director, and he's going to have the same role as someone that's titled technical director at a different club. So like I know Man United, for example, they have a sporting director and a deputy sporting director or director of football, whatever it is. We're like, no other club has that. While Chelsea, since Ronaldo, haven't had anyone like that, and he wasn't even really a proper sporting director. No. So it's like every club to be different. So I think the terminology of it is the next thing that starts making things a bit weird. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little bit odd, but I mean, end of the day, we're gonna obviously have been rejected by Freund. We're gonna carry on speaking to some other candidates, and hopefully, we can get this resolved as soon as possible. But yeah, it's sick of taking L's really and getting turned down by who we had a summer of it with players, and now first choice sporting director, it seems, has turned us down as well. So hopefully our luck will change soon.
Second choice.
Second choice. Basically been turned down twice.
Essentially,
which is not what you want, but maybe third time lucky. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But mate, moving on to kind of on the pitch matters, I guess, in terms of players. And I don't know how big a news it is, but it kind of doing the rounds on Twitter. I wanted to cover Christian Pulisic's book, and he's writing a book, which is fine. His choice. Not really sure why at his age he would need.
If someone knows in the chat, can you please put it in the chat what the book is supposed to be called, and maybe also when it's supposed to be released? Because I read that he's releasing a book and some quotes, but
he's only about 20. Pulisic's only 23, 24. I don't know why he's writing a book, but anyway, there's some quote. There's a quote in there, one particular quote that I don't know. I don't think it's not the worst thing in the world to say, but I just think it doesn't really reflect too well on him, particularly at a time when, the relationship between Pulisic and the fans.
Sacked Tuchel and stuff,
you've just set the manager. The relationship between Pulisic and the fans is not the best. He obviously doesn't really want to be at the club he wanted out. It was blocked. And this is the quote here. I'll see if I can make it a bit bigger. So basically, it's referring to the second leg of the Champions League semi-final against Real Madrid on the road to Porto. And he was just basically saying what happened before that game was hugely disappointing for me. I had a really good first leg performance, and our following match was against Fulham in the league. Tuchel told me that he was resting me for the second leg, and as a result, I didn't play a single minute in the Fulham game. Then on match day of the second semi, Tuchel tells me he's changed his mind and he's going to go with Havertz. I honestly was dumbfounded and very disappointed. I thought that I'd earned a start. And most importantly, he had assured me previously I was going to start. So by the time he brought me on with about 25 minutes left, I was just so wound up. Now,
he still got the decisive assist in that second leg, to be fair to him.
I think he did. Oh, apparently as well, USA CFC saying that Christian Pulisic, my journey so far comes out October 18th.
Okay.
Is that going to be on your reading?
Like World Cup sales, I get it.
Is that going to be on your reading list, mate?
Mate, absolutely. Hey, if Pulisic has blinded the World Cup, play off the tournament also, maybe we need to get on that.
I mean, mate, what you make of those comments? I mean, like, timing-wise, I mean, look, to be in fairness to him, he might not have known that excerpt of the book was going to be released, but I imagine with book stuff, you probably have an idea of what's going to go out and what's not. I mean, you could say perhaps PR-wise, it's not the best for him in terms of the manager's just been sacked, who had a great affiliation with the fans. As I said before, Pulisic and the fans, not the best relationship. He doesn't really want to be at the club. People frustrated with him. And it feels like a little bit sort of kicking the manager when he's down sort of thing. Like, the guy's not here anymore. So, I mean, does it really matter now? I mean, what do you make of it all? I mean, I don't know if it's a big deal or not. It's not really, but I just thought we'd cover it anyway.
Yeah, see, I agree, because it's weird. Because now, if you're going to write the book called My Journey So Far, should he mention this in the book? Yes, because he'd be stupid not to mention it in a book. But the question is, why is he writing a book? That's the part I don't understand. Like you said, he literally turned 24 the other day. So far, all you've done is be a super sub for Dortmund, play good at Chelsea for one season, and then complain about not playing enough for another 3 seasons, basically, or 2 seasons, right? So you've not done that much yet. like especially if they had a very good World Cup now and say meant the first quarters or semi-finals the USA have made in God knows how long or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Then fair enough. Do you know what I mean? Bank on that big spike of popularity after a good World Cup. Fair enough. I get it. But yeah, and you know what I'd love to know? Imagine had Chelsea not sacked Tuchel. But they've still released that. Imagine.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well.
Released and Tuchel is still in charge, because the book comes out October 18th. So if Tuchel was still in charge, whether they use this for the PR or whether it only comes out once the book is released, it's certainly not going to do him well with the current manager. So that's very interesting in and of itself, if that makes sense. So, like I say, I have no problem with him actually talking about it if that's how it happened. And he's writing his book, My Journey So Far, then that should be mentioned. And frankly, what Tuchel did there probably isn't fair, right? So if you want to look at the contents of it, it's not nice. But still, why are you writing a book? Why are you releasing it in the middle of the season? Okay, again, just before the World Cup, but is it worth the bridges that you could be burning for the PR, for the extra money at 24? Like, in this industry, so many players write books when they're done. Just write it after, man. Like, is it really necessary to already at 24 be that player that every club is going to be hesitant of getting involved with? Because you get the American publicity, which is amazing, but
Mate, do you reckon he's been writing it while on the bench? Maybe
so. But you know what I mean, though? Like,
yeah.
Even if he has the publicity from America, and of course it's a big thing, the commercial product that he is, even though it's not the right word to use for humans, but unfortunately that's the reality. Like, do you want to be the guy that no other club in the future, because he's probably not going to be at Chelsea forever, chances are going to be hesitant because God knows what he's going to say about us while he's here, while he's gone. Who knows? Like, I personally don't think it's the smartest move. Now, for him financially and for him, PR-wise in terms of back home, it might even be good because, mind you, the people that are big Pulisic fans, they don't like Tuchel anyway. So slagging Tuchel off like this, probably doesn't do him any harm like that. Do you know what I mean? And then he gets the big manager name out, Pulisic versus Tuchel, probably for clicks and stuff. Amazing. But yeah, like I say, I just don't really get why he needs to write a book at 24. But if he does, I don't have a problem with the statement itself so much. I'm like, well,
no. I mean, he's
a man as well. Like, he's not a child, right?
I mean, just on Pulisic in general, mate, whilst we're talking about him, where do you stand on him? Because it's very much, I mean, Twitter's not the best place to gauge your representation from, but there's a very clear divide. It's very much, I'm not saying it's all American Chelsea fans by any stretch of imagination, but there seems to be a large percentage, if you're looking at Twitter as a barometer, that literally think Christian Pulisic is like the best player to ever exist and he should be playing every week, and why is he not playing, and then highlighting what other Chelsea players that are playing are not doing, and then Pulisic would be doing it and whatnot. I mean, it's clear that for me, mate, for the money, where I stand on it is, I think there's a good player in there. But my problem is, for the money we paid, £63 million, other than the fact that we're still referring to lockdown Pulisic, Project Restart, goes to show how little he's actually done in a Chelsea shirt since then, by the fact that we have to go back to that as the last time he actually played half decent
Champions League semi-finals, those 2 games. Like those lockdown Pulisic, the Burnley game, and those 2 semi-finals, only one of which he was allowed to start. I mean, those are the biggest moments. Well, I agree with you, though, like in a way. Like, there is clearly a player in there. I said it, was it yesterday on my stream? I'm pretty sure it was.
There is a player there, but we're just not seeing it.
It doesn't look like the same player. Like I said that yesterday. Compare Pulisic, that scored the hat-trick against Burnley, to what we've seen of Pulisic in the last God knows how long. Like, it doesn't look like the same human being. The burst of pace, the touch, the dribbling, the confidence. But then again, there was a longer extract from what you said about Tuchel. And did you hear this? When he then scored that goal that he scored, that he said that behind him, he heard Tuchel from the sidelines shouting, Christian, don't run, stay in the pocket. Don't and Pulisic was like, nah, but I felt like I could get past and then get a goal. So I continued to run. I'm like, well, that is the fucking problem we've been talking about for God knows how long. That's exactly what I've been talking about. Because these players, they can't all of a sudden just be shit. Why can't Pulisic dribble anymore? Because he's told he shouldn't. And obviously then if you don't do it, then you're also going to get worse at it. So it's not a case of, okay, now I've been basically told not to do it as much for the last 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. And then, okay, I'm just going to do it anyway. And then you just turn it on like a flick. It's not a fucking light switch, right? It's something that you practice. Like if someone's going to not practice free kicks for a year and then all of a sudden you give them a free kick in a game, chances are it's probably not going to score. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's repetition and just being used to things is important. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into a slagging Tuchel situation, but that's why I think it's so difficult to really judge Pulisic, because obviously he started on the Lampard and was actually pretty good on the Lampard.
Did all right, yeah.
But then obviously got injured. For Lampard's second season, he was barely available because obviously he had that serious injury at the end of the first season with the FA Cup final, and then that dragged all the way into the next season. And not long before Lampard got sacked, he only came back from injury properly, I think. Right? So I'm very happy to give him more of a chance. The problem is now, since then, we've signed Sterling, who is basically competition for Pulisic in his best position. Now, again, we've only had one game in the Graham Potter, so we'll have to wait and see what positions they're both going to play. Like, can they play in the same team? Can they not? Well, they can, but will Potter pick them in the same team, yes or no? So we'll have to wait and see. But there is still a player in there. I still like the guy can clearly dribble. The guy is, compared to a lot of other people, reasonably two-footed, right? So has certain strengths to him. He's a reasonable finisher. I know he has bad moments, like in terms of bad spells where he just misses big chances. But in general, I would still deem him as not the worst finisher. Like, I think he has a finishing thing in him, if that makes sense, right? I think he can do a lot of things. I think he's used to, because of being captain of America, of the US, he's used to a lot of pressure, which is a good thing for players to have at this level. Like, I think it's a useful trait to have a player that's that young, but still so used to deal with pressure. So I think there's a lot of positives with and to Pulisic, but there is also problems. Like, why do you release a book? Of course, it's going to divide the fan base. The ones that love Tuchel are not going to be fans of you, are they? And he's very well aware that section of fans exists. He probably just doesn't care. And you know what? Fair play. But then, I just don't know. Like,
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he's used under Potter, because let's be honest. Like, I know we're criticizing him for not playing well enough, and he hasn't. But if we're going to be fair, and I think we should be fair, no one has out of the attackers. Now, you could say that was a collective issue under Thomas Tuchel. Of course, he couldn't get enough out the attackers. Now, whether that's all down to him, it's not. But a large responsibility of it is down to him as well. the way he's coaching it, the patterns of play, what he's doing on the training pitch with the guys. That's down to the manager. And then the players got to take responsibility as well, because they're the ones that are on the pitch and they're not finishing the chances. So it's a collective responsibility. So it'll be interesting
at the same time, some of the players weren't on the pitch actually that much.
Yeah, but then it'll be interesting to see what Graham Potter does with this. Now, I know the system is the same, but it's tweaked ever so slightly with James and Sterling much higher up the pitch.
I wouldn't be too sure that that's going to remain the system.
But you wouldn't know. But it'll be interesting to see how much more Graham Potter can get out of these guys, whether he coaches them in a different way, whether they just suddenly decide to turn up because they didn't like Tuchel or they've got sick of his methods or whatever it is. But it'll be interesting to see what we can get out of the attack, because that's the one thing that we desperately need to improve. And it's kind of like we've been searching for it for a number of years now. We've been searching for it really since the back end of Lampard's reign. At the start of Lampard's reign, we had no problem scoring goals. We couldn't keep him out. Now we can't score any goals. We can't keep him out the other end either. So it's a bit of a balancing act to find. But it'll be interesting to see how he does. But mate, I want to move on again from here. Just another thing that I've seen earlier from Simon Phillips. And in fairness to him, he's been pretty spot on throughout the summer. He's got some good sources, and most of his info is pretty reliable. And they're saying that, I think this is one of his sources or him saying, it isn't just the midfield that our new owners want to address. They also want to look at attack. Chelsea are ready for a serious approach from Bayern Munich for Kai Havertz next summer. Now, on the attack, it obviously needs improving. I don't know if we're going to do any attacking signings in January. I would perhaps say unlikely, but you just never know. I'd say midfield's more of a priority. What do you make on the Kai Havertz to Bayern Munich links? It kind of makes sense, doesn't it, in terms of young German player, done very well in the Bundesliga. Obviously, Bayern are they're probably looking to replace Thomas Müller at some point. You'd imagine that Havertz could potentially be a kind of, I'm not saying like for like, but could be a replacement within the squad for Thomas Müller. I'm not saying he's as good or whatever.
What they need is a striker, bro. They're in absolute turmoil.
They need a 9.
Buy anyone.
Yeah, they need a 9 big time.
He would be able to be that striker without being a real striker for them. Yeah.
I mean, where do you stand on those links? I mean, for me, I Havertz frustrates me so much. And again, I think it looks like at the moment to me another one of those players that just isn't suited for the Premier League. Like, I think if he has another season like the first two he's had at Chelsea, where he doesn't really do anything or doesn't really contribute very much, I actually think we'd be better off just getting rid of him. I really do. I'm not saying they're going to get.
You know what I think is so difficult, bro? Because of how life is at Chelsea. Like, we sit here and say now this is his third season, and factually it is his third season. But now in his first season, 6 months in, the manager that signed him gets sacked.
Yeah.
Then he gets this German manager in who the whole fan base, the whole of England thinks, okay, he's just basically they brought him in because Havertz and Bayern aren't working on the Lampard, so that's why Chelsea have now brought a German manager. Remember that. That's how Sky Sports, like England's
they brought a German manager in to get him.
That's the reason they gave. Yeah, of course, that's why they went for Thomas Tuchel. Now we sacked Thomas Tuchel. He's all of a sudden amazing. 18 months ago, we only brought him in because Germans. Do you know what I mean? And now Graham Potter, who they've been sucking off for the last 12 months, now he's like, oh, what a twat, he's going to Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? That's just how it goes. So for me, even though this is his third season, it's like, it is. But the first one, you had the manager sacked. Then you had a manager instead who, we won the Champions League. Mind you, Kai Havertz scored that winning goal. I know people say he always lives off that too much, but what else do you live off if not, like, Pulisic lives off a Project Restart? I'd rather live off a Champions League winning goal than a Project Restart. Do you know what I mean? They got top 4. I mean, I know that top 4 is what we needed to win said Champions League that Kai won in the end, but still. But still, a manager when none of the attackers worked, right? No matter whether it was a new £100 million experienced striker, whether it was a fancy winger, whether it was a technical player that is good at shooting and crossing like Ziyech, none of them worked. Like, let's be honest, none of them. The only one that was somewhat reasonable was Mason Mount, who wasn't even an attacker. Somehow he was the best attacker, which is just illogical, right? And then you have obviously the whole ownership stuff, which clearly didn't make things any better for and easier for the players either. And now we have another manager again. So for me, I will honestly hold that for pretty much every player in the squad right now, aside from ones where it's because of age and injury, being very injury prone. I wouldn't want to even make any judgment or statement in terms of do I think that guy should be sold, yes or no, because I'm like, I agree with you. Even I'm growing frustrated with Kai to some extent. I like him a lot. I rate him a lot as well. And I want him to succeed, so I'm probably more willing to give him chances maybe than you are, Charlie. But I also have my limits. But now, what's the point in deciding this now? Like, if he has a great season under Potter, obviously don't sell him.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
he has a really, really bad season and Potter basically doesn't play him anyway, and Potter is going to be our manager for the next at least 5 years, if that's the plan, to genuinely stick to this idea, well, then obviously sell him. But if it's going to be amazing, then obviously do not sell him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just as simple as that, really.
I mean, this is a good point from Texas Blue. Havertz's contract ends in 2025. So if we give him one more year after this, he's then into the last year of his contract. So again, you're facing a difficult decision with Kai Havertz at some point in the next couple of years, whether you sell him or whether you offer him a new contract. So look, I mean, this is ifs and buts.
It's a decisive season for him for sure to see whether we're going to try to sell him or whether we're going to give him a new contract. It's going to be important. But I still way more than with Pulisic. Like, I like Pulisic. I'm nowhere near as critical of him as a lot of other fans are. But Kai Havertz, like, a very different level of, I think there's a player in there. Like, with Pulisic, I think that. With Havertz, I know that for a fact. It's just a question of whether we can get it out of him. Now, some of the American fans might hate me for what I just said here. Sorry. It's just my opinion. I think there's something incredible in Kai Havertz. And I think there's something very good in Christian Pulisic, but Christian Pulisic is much more dependent on his body. And I'm not sure if that does it anymore because he seems so much slower. Now, if he can go quick again, great. But if he can't turn quick again, I'm not even sure if there is a good player in it. But because he needs that pace, otherwise it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I have to cover it. The Ronaldo links again seems to be coming back in terms of potentially in January or next summer. I mean, next summer I don't really think there's much point, but it was clear that the only reason Ronaldo didn't come to Chelsea in the summer was because Thomas Tuchel didn't want it. Bowley is evidently very keen to get him. He asked Tuchel on multiple occasions about Ronaldo. Now that Tuchel's gone, mate, these links are coming back. Do you actually think there could be a chance that in January we could look to go for it? But my only concern then would be a 33-year-old Aubameyang and a 37-year-old Ronaldo as your centre forward options. It's not awful,
mate,
but
I keep forgetting that we signed Aubameyang. I keep forgetting that's a reality.
Do you think there's a chance? Do you think there's a chance?
Anyway, yes, I do think there is a chance, but I don't think it's like there's a chance, but I don't think the likelihood is that big. Like, if Bowley does that, like I've been quite defensive of Bowley on a lot of things because I'm like, some things might seem stupid now, crazy now, but give it some time to see how crazy and stupid these things turn out. Like, yeah, everything is looking up in the air right now and turmoil and everything, but give it 2-3 years and see where we actually are. Maybe what we're doing right now is exactly just the foundation for why we find a different way of being super successful. There is still hope for that. But if he genuinely is like, okay, now Tuchel's gone, I'm still going to get Ronaldo. If I get it commercially, bro, you just signed Graham Potter. Clearly, you don't only care about commercial, potential, because otherwise you wouldn't have picked Graham Potter as the manager. Otherwise, you would have probably got Jose back. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was purely for commercial reasons. So I don't see him as that. So that's why the Ronaldo thing, yeah. But like someone said in the chat, Ronaldo would now be even worse than he would have been anyway, because we already have Aubameyang. Like, no.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, if we can get rid of Aubameyang again, I'd be more okay with Ronaldo. But no, no. Everything we know about Graham Potter tells me Graham Potter is going to say no to Ronaldo all the same.
Ronaldo's not a Potter player, is he? I don't think it's a Potter system. It's hard to say no, but it would be evident that it would definitely be a Bowley signing.
Rather bring back Giroud or Tammy at this point. I'd much rather both of them than Ronaldo.
Giroud's one of them ones, right? I'm actually pissed we let him go. It's because
the guy was also doing Italy. Like, don't forget also Lukaku.
No,
it's also Italy.
It is true, and that's a fair point to say, because all the people that are saying, "Oh, look, Giroud and Tammy are doing really well," are the same people that are saying about Lukaku. Oh, it's only Italy. So then that context still applies to Giroud and Tammy. I like Giroud. I think he could have been very useful for us still, but I mean, we got what?
Yeah,
$1.5 million for him. I mean, I might as well mention the guy in the picture, Toney. He's someone that I would like to see at a bigger club. Do you like him? Obviously, he's called up to the England squad. He's had a great start to the season. Let's see how this season pans out for him. He could go to the World Cup potentially. I think he's got a high chance if he carries on his good form. Is he someone that you'd like to see Chelsea go in for? I mean, there were rumours reportedly that Chelsea were lining up a £50 million bid for him towards the end of the summer window. I mean, is Ivan Toney someone that ticks boxes for you? He's had a great start to the season, scored a few goals.
Absolutely. I think it's great if he makes it to the World Cup and now that he's been called up to England, because my big question mark with him, Antonio, has always been, can he do it outside of the Brentford structure? Because you know how there's some players that just, like Troy Deeney.
Yeah.
Troy Deeney was just amazing for Watford. But if you put him anywhere else, he wouldn't have been anywhere near as good. I also think Jamie Vardy would have been nowhere near as good at any club other than Leicester.
Do you know what? I would have loved to have seen.
Wrong, but
I would have loved to have seen what Vardy would have done at Arsenal if he'd gone to Arsenal when he could have gone there. It'd have been interesting to see.
Instead, we signed Aubameyang at the time. Would have been much more logical.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would have been, mate. But yeah, Ivan Toney, you'd be keen for that.
He's a Liverpool fan, is he? According to you,
is he? Oh, well. I don't really care as long as he scores goals for Chelsea. It's not. But the thing is, though, like you think, like English at Brentford within the Premier League, if he has a good season, good World Cup and whatnot, that price is going up.
Yeah, I mean it's going up anyway, isn't it? Like you can't do anything about that, I guess. But yeah, I'd like him, but at the same time, I want to see more of Broja first.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to have a bit more of a more opportunity for me as a fan to make a full judgment on Broja. And I hope Graham Potter gives him that. And then by the time we get to next summer, I assume we're not going to sign someone like Ivan Toney in January. Before we get to the summer, I want to have... Because if I think Broja has it to potentially be our long-term 9, I think what a waste of money Ivan Toney is. But at the same time, if he's not, Ivan Toney could be amazing. And you could still be on the lookout, on the hunt for like a superstar in a couple of years' time, say Benjamin Sesko from RB Salzburg turns into this next Erling Haaland in 2-3 years. If you have, someone's in the chat now, if you have Toney and then he still bangs you between 16 and 23 goals, which would still be better than anyone since Diego Costa has, and then you kind of use that as your kind of stopgap almost until you go for a superstar again, amazing. Or he just turns out so good that you don't need a superstar because he is your superstar. But maybe also Broja can be that. And we can just do Broja until we get someone super. But Broja might be also a little too young to be that now. So it's very difficult. That's why it's so unfortunate that, we couldn't get Lukaku to work because age-wise, he was perfect.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. But unfortunately, it's not happened. We just have to wait and see, how Potter can get this attack to gel, whether any options become available, whether we revisit Wilfried Zaha in January. The fact he'll only have 6 months left on his contract then as well. He's clearly going to be a free agent in the summer, so maybe we can get a pre-contract agreement in place or something along those lines if we're still keen. But mate, let's move on to midfield. Obviously, need reinforcements there. How do you see Potter using the midfield this season before we sort of talk about potential targets and what we may or may not do as early as January? Obviously, we're in for Edson Alvarez on deadline day. Didn't happen. We got Dennis Zakaria in, who I think could play a key role. I like him as a player. He's obviously going with a holding player and 2 8s, as it were, in that system. It's more 3-5-2 than Tuchel's 3-4-3 with the pivot. What do you make of the midfield situation at Chelsea at the moment? Because we've got Kante and Jorginho who could potentially both be leaving on frees. We've got Ruben, we've got Conor Gallagher. We've obviously got Kovacic as well. Mount now comes into play in that midfield area if he plays slightly deeper, if that's what Graham Potter is going to go with. Do you like the midfield options we've got? What do you think's missing?
The DM. And, you heard Zakaria today when he, Zakaria... Did you see the comments that he made?
Mate, he wanted to work for Tuchel, and he was one of the reasons he came, and he's just gone.
I mean, that too.
But... And he was basically muddying Juve as well, saying they should
yeah, exactly. And he's only on loan.
Yeah.
No one telling him that he's on loan. Because you can't talk to your parent club like that. What is he? And then he's talking about he needs space for his runs. And I'm like, so you came from Serie A to the Premier League for more space?
But he's not
Even
getting
though
any.
I pitch
He's not
yourself
getting any.
out
He's not
half the
getting any
size.
space there.
Like, yeah, it's what. Also, and then like Pies replied it, what runs? We want you to be a DM. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what I've been saying. He's not a DM, or he doesn't want to be anyway. So I don't flipping out. That's my only problem, because I think in general, if we have to play these wing backs anyway, like, I'm not the biggest fan, or the three at the back anyway,
Yeah.
then I like the idea of having a 6 and 2 8s, because I think it is the best balance, personally. If you have two players that can run enough to fill the 8 roles, then I think 2 8s in front of a 6 is the best balanced midfield. Just my personal footballing opinion. And then obviously the better your 6 is, the easier you make it. But at the same time, I guess if you have a 3 behind them and then 2 8s in front of him, I reckon Georgie can do a job. But how long? And like Pi says,
he's so weak in the transition, though, isn't he?
On transition, it's very dangerous. But at the same time, on transition, like, that's how transition works, really, isn't it?
Like, if he would just make tactical fouls, bring his man down, and just take the booking on the halfway line, we wouldn't have considered that goal to start with, because that attack would have been stopped. And again, against Southampton,
you can say that same thing about Cucurella all the same.
So yeah. There's plenty of them for sure. But I mean, we look at the midfield options we've got. I mean, we know that Potter likes working with young players. How much this sort of seeming switch to kind of a 3-5-2, so with really 3 midfield players.
Yeah,
surely that's going to be a big positive for the likes of Conor Gallagher and Chukwuemeka as well.
I think so. I mean, yeah, the interesting thing is just who's going to be the 2 6s, because Loftus-Cheek seemingly is now a second striker under Graham Potter. I mean, we may see him as an 8 again as well, but the fact that he put him in a second striker makes me not think he's going to use him as a DM. Could be wrong, though. Who knows? But that means, okay, Jorginho, and then who's going to be the other one? Zakaria? But
I mean,
who's going to be the one if not Jorginho? So that's why I'm not even too sure yet we're actually going to stick to this formation, because if Jorginho is the only one and then he's not too happy with that, or Jorginho can't play every game, mind you, then we need another option for that, right? So it's just, yeah.
We've got Kante to come back into the mix as well.
Yeah, but is he going to play DM? I doubt it. I mean,
so he's going to play as what? So he's going to play as one of those 8s then?
Probably is. Or not at all, because he's going to be injured anyway.
Well, I'll not be funny. I would rather have Kovacic and Mount than Kante and Kovacic, or Kante and Mount, or Kante and Gallagher.
Oh yeah, I would prefer that as well. But it just depends on the opponent. When we play Man City, put Kante in. We play Liverpool, put Kante in. We play Arsenal, put Kante in. All the other games, do not put Kante in.
I mean, how many midfield players do you think we need? Because January's coming up. It's clear that that midfield is a target to strengthen as early as January potentially.
Which is weird, because we already arguably have too many midfielders for one position and too little for the other.
Yeah, I mean, Edson Alvarez is potentially, we're going to go back in for him. I know there's other options, obviously, with the Brighton links now. Moise Caicedo, who's done very well under Graham Potter.
By the way, I personally think that's not a real link at all. I think that's
don't think so.
Using the fact that we signed Potter to make up rumors, because there is no chance in hell Graham Potter has so far had time to think about who is going to sign in January. So we're not going to have a Potter January transfer target yet.
No,
the guy's barely got to know with the current squad. Do you know what I mean?
I watched. I don't know how much you know about Edson Alvarez. I like him as a player. I watched him when Liverpool played Ajax in the Champions League.
Yeah,
I thought he did okay. There are a few deficiencies there. But he looks like he could be a decent player, a good age. He's obviously learning at one of the best, one of the top places to learn your football in Ajax. Mate, are you a fan of his? Do you think he could be the sort of that kind of destroyer type, that holding midfield player that Chelsea need? Because I'm just not sure. I mean, you've obviously got Zakaria as well there. I mean, if that all goes well, we could sign him for what, 30, 40 million euros, which would be a bargain if he does well for us. Where do you stand on those two? Alvarez first, and then obviously Zakaria as well, because he could be key for us this season.
I mean, again, the Zakaria thing is just, can he be a DM? If he can, good. Then let's see. Let's see if Potter gives him that chance. Let's see what he does. Alvarez, I like Alvarez. Now, I was more sure about him in the way Tuchel plays than I am in the way Potter plays, because Potter is so about high intensity and energy. Even though Ajax, I guess, is that to some extent as well, but they are that at an Eredivisie level. Very different to the Prem. So I'm a little bit less convinced because he's tall, he's good at tackling. He can. I mean, some people say he's good at passing. Some people say he has deficiencies in passing. I've probably not seen enough to make a full judgment on that. But he's not the quickest, and he's tall. So is he just going to be an old Matic? Remember when Matic was old and just turned like a truck? And if we play like all this pressing and then like, I know Jorginho turns like a truck as well, and he's just small. But yeah. So I'm a little bit less convinced of the Alvarez thing with the way Potter plays personally. But then again, I also just want to wait. If Potter wants him, I'm like, okay, well, it's a bit like, I feel like a little bit like with Sarri, where I'm like, okay, a manager where I see a plan, even if the plan doesn't yet work. Lampard, I didn't see a plan. Yeah. Even Tuchel, I didn't really see a plan. Not at all times. While people might not have liked Sarri, there was at least a plan. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, if there's a plan, if there's an idea, then the manager, I would expect him to know who he thinks can help him achieve that idea. So that's why I'm like, when someone like Sarri wants a player, or when someone like Potter now wants a player, I'm like, okay, well, if you have a plan of how you want to play, then get a player that helps you how you want to play. Sounds good to me. Rather than a manager that doesn't seem to be sure how he does want to play and just gets a good player. Do you know what I mean? So that's why if Potter wants him, go ahead. I'm happy with that. But now we have Zakaria already. It's just, I know we're still linked with him in Alvarez in January, but it's just like count it down. Mason, Kovacic, Gallagher, Kante. That's 4. And that's not even mentioning Ruben, Zakaria, Jorginho, and Chukwuemeka. That's 8 midfielders. Yeah. Then we want to buy one.
Yeah, mate. Something's got to give in that department, And obviously, there's going to be a revamp for the midfield. A couple could be going out.
Don't be shocked if you see Hakim Ziyech play as an 8 again, or Kai at some point play as an 8.
Or Pulisic played. Tuchel's used Pulisic as an 8 before as well. I mean, there's all sorts going on. I mean, I don't like. It feels weird though, because we've had a new manager in, and yet we've literally had one game, and he's been here 3 weeks almost. It'll be coming up.
By the time we play, did you see that stat, by the way? Between, obviously, in the end, he played that Champions League game, but between his appointment and his first Premier League game will be 22 days, while between our first pre-season game of the summer and the first Premier League game was just 20 days.
So mate, it's mad. It feels crazy. It feels so weird, and it feels so weird having this gap, in the middle of the season. Not in the middle of the season, right at the start.
Season. And we're going to have even more packed than all the rest because, of course,
it's almost it's best part of a month's break, just under 4 weeks of no Premier League games. And we're lucky we had that Champions League game. Otherwise, it would have been. There would have just been nothing. Good. But I mean, October is going to make up for it in some regards. We've got 9 games at the moment, 1 every 3 days.
Hopefully going to 2, fingers crossed.
Mate, hopefully going out to Milan. That'll be class.
Milan, I am going for sure, but Salzburg, I'm still hoping for tickets. It's because it's a smaller stadium. It's more difficult to get tickets, even being from Austria.
Mate, do you not sit in the Red Bull end?
Nope.
No.
I could get tickets for there, expensive tickets, but no, I'm not going there.
You couldn't do that.
I couldn't. No.
Mate, I just want to talk about to round out, mate, expectations for this season. Obviously, as we, like myself and you, growing up, all we've known is kind of Chelsea winning since we've been following the club. We're kind of, I feel, not a kind of a, I guess we are at a sort of a pivotal moment in terms of new ownership, and things are going to be potentially a little bit different. Graham Potter's come in. It's the first time since I've been following the club really that we've not gone for a big name manager with a big reputation. You had Mourinho, Conte, Ancelotti, Scolari, Villas-Boas, to name a few. Graham Potter's very much kind of one English manager. He must be the first English manager at Chelsea since Glenn Hoddle. I can't think of another one. Lampard. That was really embarrassing. Yeah, we've had Lampard and Glenn. We've had Lampard and Glenn Hoddle.
But Lampard doesn't really count because we only got him because of the transfer ban. So
exactly. So we'll have that Glenn Hoddle. That's why I didn't think of him. So he's obviously English manager. No real big club experience. Very minimal European experience as well. So it's definitely a different direction we're going down. It's a project. I hate using that word, the project, but he's coming in for a project
and process.
Trust the process, project. He's building something. All these kind of cliche sayings, but I mean, it's unthinkable. I know this is very adamant that, the fact that, we have to finish top four, like regardless. I mean, there's things saying that even if we were to miss out on the top four, which I still don't think will happen, but even if we were to miss out on it, Potter would still be in the job. I think if Potter's your guy as the owners, then if we end up coming fifth, he still needs to stay here. I know people might not agree with that, and I may feel differently if that situation occurs, if it does arrive. But do you think we need to change our expectations slightly as Chelsea fans and actually accept that, do you know what? It might get worse, or it might not get any better straight away, and it could take a little bit of time before things get going again. And we need to give Potter that time. We need to accept that actually, do you know what? Straight away, we might not be winning, even though the two should be able to coincide alongside each other in terms of building as well as winning. But mate, have you accepted that we as fans need to slightly lower our expectations or adjust them, or do you think it's right to still demand success at Chelsea despite the fact we're going through a transitional period?
I think it depends on what kind of success you do demand. If you demand a cup win every now and again, and
then,
if we happen to somehow slide into the Europa League for a season, win that, but win the Prem and win the Champions League, can you expect that at the moment? I would say no. But I still think we should expect top four this season. Mind you, aren't we still ahead of Liverpool?
We are still ahead of Liverpool. I mean, it's not panic.
Brighton still fourth, right?
Yeah, we're only 5 points off the top. So,
I mean, we're maybe, I think 8, but obviously have a game in hand. But obviously we're miles off the top 3 already. Again, game in hand, but still, we're miles off like City, Arsenal, and Spurs, which is bonkers because we absolutely battered Spurs. We were just robbed by the ref.
Spurs play shit football as well, but they keep winning.
Turn up against Spurs, unfortunately. But yeah, I still think top 4 has to be the aim. Like, obviously, United are looking better, but United are United. They looked good under Solskjaer for months at times, and then all of a sudden they capitulated again.
But we are shiz against. We do play shiz against them.
No, we play shit against them, but
but in general, we should be able to finish
us, to be fair, but and with Liverpool, you don't know like how that's going to go. So I still think because new manager is all well and good, but essentially, especially in the league, it's just one game after the other, right? And Potter knows the Premier League. So if anything, on a Premier League basis, we shouldn't really have any disadvantage with having Potter instead of Tuchel. If anything, maybe in the Premier League, it's going to get better. Now, will it take him a little bit of time to maybe get the players to play how you want? Maybe. But we still have a good team. Like, I know we criticize, the midfield here and the attackers there, but they're still good players, a lot of them. And we still have, let's say, at least a top 6 squad. Right? Yeah. In certain parts of the team, great. In certain other parts of the team, not great. But then again, like Aubameyang could all of a sudden come October, November, start scoring 3 goals every game. Could be. Yeah. Could be. He absolutely could do. That Aubameyang does exist. Now, will we likely see him at Chelsea? Probably not. But there is a chance. So I still think we need to expect top 4. Now, should we sack Potter if we don't get top 4? I think no, because that's silly. At this point. Now, would it be disappointing? Of course. But, sometimes you have to do what you have to do. That's what happens when you're in the Premier League. There's a lot of big clubs. And when you're in transition, you're in transition. It happens. But I don't think we should sit here and lower our expectations as a football club. I think the aim should still be, we have to be realistic. You can't catch up to City, the gap that we have to City especially. We can't catch that up from one day to another. But we still have to expect to slowly but surely close that gap and get there within the next 3 to 4 years, be challenging for the league. And ideally with Graham Potter, I suppose. Let's see if that's possible. I mean, City is difficult to beat because with how City are, you need to become as good as City because City are not going to get worse. If they lose a player, they sign a different one. Do you know what I mean? And they have the only hope that we have is that once Pep leaves, is that they're going to not be as good. But until Klopp, I said Pep, I think. Until Pep leaves, you're going to have to be nearly perfect. You're going to have to finish a season with 95 plus points probably to win the league. And that's going to be difficult to achieve, if I'm honest, from where we are now. But you have to start somewhere. So,
yeah, you have to start somewhere. And I think, I think you're 100% right, mate. If we've invested all this money in 5-year contract, 12 million a season, 20 million to get him out of Brighton, extra 2 mil for his coaching staff, to then just chuck that all away after one season, would be ridiculous.
No, if we come like 12th, maybe.
Oh
it's a
yeah,
different
I mean,
situation.
what I mean is,
But if we come like 5th or 6th,
yeah, I mean, whilst I'll be fuming, like you'd like,
it also depends on the circumstances, right?
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
how
a lot
the
of it's
way.
circumstantial and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, mate. I think we shouldn't be lowering our expectations, but I think we should be mindful that it's going to take time for us to be competitive in the Premier League, and it's going to perhaps take time for us we might not win a trophy this season. And as annoying as that
we
is,
might win the Europa League.
We could win it. Oh yeah, to be fair, mate, we might even drop into the Europa League, so we could get that, maintain our.
And then we're cooking again.
Yeah, and then we maintain our 100% record.
Where's the Europa League final this year? Come on.
Yeah, mate. Who knows, mate? We joke about it, but mate, we're in danger of dropping into that Europa League. So we have got.
If we don't win at home against Milan, we're done.
Yeah, I'd say we're done. Yeah, I would agree on that for sure. But yeah, mate, it seems like a good point to round out, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Laurens, cheers for your time, bro. Appreciated as always, guys. Make sure you subscribe to Laurens's channel and follow him on Twitter. Links both in the description below. Cheers for tuning in as always. Thanks for getting involved in the chat. On your way out, didn't actually mention it at all in the stream, but on your way out, guys, smash the likes. Let's get those likes up, and please do subscribe to the channel as well on your way out if you haven't done so already. Heading towards that 2K mark, so I know there's people tuning in that aren't subscribed, so please do subscribe to the channel on your way out. It'd be greatly appreciated. I'm not sure when I'm going to be back again with another video or stream. Depends what news appears, but obviously October is going to be a packed month with content, so with plenty of games and whatnot going on, so there'll be loads then. But yeah, not sure when we'll be back. Hopefully some good news to report in the next couple of days. But until then, guys, take care and up the Chels.